Have you ever almost let go of something without realizing what it truly meant to you? Not because you didn't care, but because time had quietly covered it with dust, with distance, with forgetting. That was how it began for us, not with a big decision, not with a dramatic moment, but with a simple conversation on a quiet afternoon. We should sell the house, my brother said. His voice was calm, practical, as if he had already thought about it many times before saying it out loud. I didn't answer right away because I knew which house he meant, not the one we lived in now, but the old one, the house at the end of a quiet road, surrounded by tall trees, the one we hadn't visited in years, the one that still held more memories than we were ready to face. It's just sitting there, he continued. No one's using it. A small pause. We're paying for maintenance for nothing. His words made sense, logical, clear. And yet, something inside me resisted. Not strongly, not loudly, just quietly, like a feeling. That didn't have words yet. When was the last time you went there? He asked. I looked down slightly, thinking, trying to remember, but the answer didn't come easily. That's how long it had been. I don't know, I said honestly. He nodded. Exactly. Another pause. We don't need it anymore. Don't need it anymore. The sentence stayed with me. Simple, final. And maybe that was what made it difficult. Because some things are not about need. They are about something else, something harder to define. I exhaled slowly, trying to understand what I was feeling, but it was unclear, like trying to remember a dream that fades the moment you reach for it. Maybe you're right, I said finally. The words felt strange, even as I said them, like they didn't fully belong to me. But I didn't argue, because I didn't have a reason not to. At least, not one I could explain. A few days later, we drove there together. The road felt longer than I remembered. Or maybe it just felt different now. Quieter, less familiar. The trees seemed taller, the air stiller, as if the place had been waiting, in silence, all this time. When the house finally came into view, I felt something shift inside me, a small movement, barely noticeable, but real. There it is, my brother said. I nodded, but I didn't speak, because suddenly, the house didn't feel like an object anymore. It felt like something alive, something that had been left behind. We parked near the gate. The metal was slightly rusted, the paint faded. Time had been here, quietly, doing its work. My brother stepped out first, walking toward the door with purpose, like someone who already knew what needed to be done. I followed more slowly, each step careful, as if I was entering something, not just a place, but a memory. He unlocked the door. It opened with a soft creak, a sound that felt familiar, too familiar. We stepped inside. The air was different here, cool, still, carrying a faint scent of wood and something older, something that had stayed long after we left. Dust floated gently in the light, moving slowly, like time itself. We didn't speak at first because there was too much to take in, too many small details. Returning all at once, the table near the window, the old chair, the shelf that still held a few forgotten books. Nothing had changed, and yet everything felt different. It's smaller than I remember, my brother said. I looked around. He was right. Or maybe we had just grown. I walked further inside, my steps soft, almost careful not to disturb something, as if the house was listening. Each room held a piece of the past, a moment, a memory, but not in a clear way, not like a photograph, more like a feeling, just out of reach. We moved slowly, from one room to another, opening doors, looking inside, saying very little, until we reached the back of the house, a small room, one we hadn't used much before. My brother pushed the door open. It resisted slightly, as if it hadn't been touched in a long time. Inside, it was darker, quieter, more still than the rest of the house. "What was this room again?" he asked. I stepped closer, looking inside, trying to remember. But the answer didn't come immediately. And that felt strange, because this was our house. And yet, there were parts of it I no longer recognized. I took a step inside, slowly. The floor creaked softly beneath me. Dust covered most of the surfaces. But something about the room felt different. Not empty, not forgotten, but holding something. I couldn't explain it, not yet, but I felt it clearly, like a quiet presence, waiting. "Do you remember this?" my brother asked again. I shook my head slightly. "No," I said, but even as I said it, something inside me hesitated, because maybe I did remember, just not fully, not clearly enough to name it. I moved further into the room, closer to the far wall, where a small wooden cabinet stood, old, worn, almost hidden in the shadows. I reached out, brushing my fingers lightly across its surface. Dust lifted into the air, dancing slowly in the faint light. And in that moment, I felt something shift again, stronger this time. Not just a feeling, but a sense that this place, this house, was not as empty as we thought, that it was holding something we had forgotten, something quiet, something important, something we were about to discover. I kept my hand on the cabinet for a moment longer, not opening it, not moving, just feeling something I couldn't explain. My brother stood behind me, watching quietly. "Do you think there's anything inside?" he asked. His voice was calm, curious, but not emotional, not like what I was feeling. "I don't know," I said softly. And it was true, because this moment felt less about what was inside and more about what we had forgotten. I slowly pulled the small handle. The wood resisted at first, then gave way. With a soft, tired sound, the door opened. Inside, there was not much, just a few old items, a folded cloth, a small box, and something else, tucked carefully in the corner. I leaned in slightly, reaching for it. It was a notebook, thin, worn, its edges slightly yellowed with time. I picked it up gently, as if it might break if I held it too quickly. My brother stepped closer. "What is it?" he asked. I looked at the cover. There was no title, no name, just a simple surface, untouched by anything obvious. "I'm not sure," I said, but something inside me was already telling me this mattered. I opened it slowly. The first page was blank, or at least, it looked blank at first. Then I noticed it. Faint writing, very light, almost invisible, as if someone had written softly. Not wanting to be heard, I leaned closer, trying to read. The words were simple, but they carried something quiet, something careful. "If you are reading this," I paused, my breath slowing slightly. My brother leaned in too. "What does it say?" he asked. I read it again, this time more clearly. "If you are reading this, then you came back." The sentence stayed there, suspended in the still air of the room. My brother frowned slightly. "Came back?" he repeated. I didn't answer, because something about those words felt personal, not just written, but meant. For us. I turned the page. More writing. Clearer this time. Still gentle, still careful. I didn't know if you would, but I hoped you might. A quiet pause filled the room. I could feel it again. That presence, not physical, but something emotional, something left behind. Intentionally. Who wrote this? My brother asked. I shook my head slowly. I don't know. But even as I said it, a thought began to form, not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel it. I turned another page. The handwriting continued, steady, consistent. This house was never just a house. I felt something shift again, stronger this time. Oh, because those words echoed something I had felt but couldn't explain. It was a place where we tried. A pause. Not perfectly. Not always successfully. I swallowed softly. My brother said nothing now. He was reading with me, listening. This was where we made mistakes, where we stayed quiet when we shouldn't have. The air in the room felt heavier, not uncomfortable, but meaningful, like the walls themselves were remembering, and where we loved, even when we didn't know how to say it. I stopped reading, just for a moment, because those words felt too close, too familiar. My brother shifted slightly beside me. Keep going, he said quietly. I nodded, turning the page. I know this house may feel empty now, but it is not. A pause. It holds every moment we didn't understand until it was too late. I felt my chest tighten slightly because something about that sentence felt like a truth I had been avoiding. If you are here, then maybe you're ready to see it differently. The words slowed me down, each one landing carefully, as if asking to be felt, not just read. Not as something old, but as something unfinished. I exhaled slowly. My brother leaned back slightly, processing. Unfinished? He said, his voice softer now, less certain. I nodded slightly, still looking at the page, because something inside me was beginning to understand. This wasn't just a notebook. It wasn't just a memory. It was something else, something left behind, on purpose. I turned another page. The handwriting changed slightly, not in style, but in feeling, more open, more direct. There are things in this house you may not remember. A pause. Look carefully. The sentence was simple, but it carried direction, intention, like a quiet invitation. I looked up from the notebook, slowly scanning the room again, the cabinet, the walls, the corners we had ignored before. What do you think it means? My brother asked. I didn't answer immediately, because I was still listening to something inside me. Not the words anymore, but the feeling behind them. I think, I said slowly, then paused. I think we missed something. He looked at me. What kind of something? I shook my head slightly. I don't know yet, but I could feel it clearly now. This house was not just holding memories. It was holding something hidden, not physically hidden, but emotionally. Something we had walked past without seeing, something we had lived inside without understanding. And now, for the first time, we were being asked to look again. Not quickly, not logically, but carefully, quietly. I closed the notebook gently, holding it in my hands, feeling its weight, not heavy, but significant. We should keep looking, I said softly. My brother nodded. Yes, he replied, but his voice had changed too, less certain, more thoughtful. We stepped back into the hallway. The house felt different now, not empty, not forgotten, but alive. with something waiting to be seen. And as we move forward, I realized something slowly. This was no longer about selling the house, it was about understanding it. And maybe understanding something about ourselves we had never seen before. We stepped out of the small room, but something from it stayed with us. Not just the notebook, not just the words, but the feeling that the house was no longer silent. It was speaking, just not in a way we were used to. The hallway felt different now, the same narrow space, the same faded walls, but somehow more present, as if every corner held something waiting to be noticed. We didn't rush. There was no urgency in our steps. Because this was not something that could be solved quickly. It had to be felt, understood slowly. "Where should we look?" my brother asked. His voice was quieter now, more careful. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I listened, not for sound, but for something else. A memory, a pull, and then, without fully thinking, I turned toward the living room, the place where we used to spend the most time, the place that felt the most familiar, and yet the most forgotten. We walked in together. The light had shifted slightly, falling differently across the floor. Dust still moved gently in the air. Time, still present, but no longer unnoticed. I stood in the center of the room, looking around slowly, the old sofa, the small table, and the window where the light used to come in every afternoon. And suddenly, something came back, not clearly, not completely, but enough to stop me. "You remember something?" my brother asked. I nodded slightly. "I think so." I walked toward the window, each step slower now, more intentional. "I used to sit here," I said quietly, "after school." He looked at me. "You never told me that." I gave a small, almost distant smile. "I don't think I told anyone." The memory felt fragile, like something that had been hidden, even from myself. "I would sit here and just look outside," I continued. "At what?" he asked. I paused, trying to see it again. The trees, the light, a small breath. And sometimes I would wait. "For what?" he asked softly. I didn't answer immediately, because now the memory was becoming clearer, and with it, a feeling I had not expected. "For someone to come home," I said finally. The words came out gently, but they carried something deeper. My brother was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I don't remember that." I nodded. "That's the strange part," I said. "Neither did I." Until now. I looked at the table beside the window. There was a small drawer, one I had not noticed before, or maybe one I had forgotten. I reached down, pulling it open slowly. Inside, there was almost nothing, just a few old papers and a small object resting in the corner. I picked it up. It was a key, old, simple, not attached to anything, just there. My brother leaned closer. "A key?" he said. I nodded. "Yes." We looked at it together, turning it slightly as if it might reveal something on its own. "Do you know what it's for?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." But again, that feeling returned, that quiet sense that this was not random, that this belonged to something we hadn't seen yet. I placed the key in my hand, holding it more firmly now. "Maybe it's connected," I said. "To the notebook." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." We stood there for a moment, thinking, not rushing to solve it, just allowing the pieces to exist together. Then he looked around the room again. "If there's a key, then there must be something it opens," he said. I followed his gaze, The walls, the shelves, the corners of the room, all quiet, all still. But now, full of possibility. We move slowly again, this time more aware, looking not just at what was visible, but at what might be hidden, behind things, under things, within things we had ignored before. The house no longer felt passive, it felt responsive, as if it was waiting for us. To notice the right detail, to ask the right question, we checked the shelves, the cabinets, nothing unusual, nothing that matched the key. Then we moved toward the hallway again, and as I stepped out, something caught my attention. A small section of the wall, slightly different from the rest, not obvious, but enough to feel out of place. I stopped, looking more closely. "What is it?" my brother asked. I stepped closer to the wall, running my fingers lightly across it. The surface felt the same, but the sound was slightly different. Hollow. I tapped it gently. Once, then again. The sound echoed softly, not solid like the rest. My brother stepped beside me. "You think there's something behind it?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, but my hand tightened slightly around the key. "I think so," I said quietly. We both stood there, looking at the wall, at something that had been there all along, but never noticed. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This house had not changed. We had. And now, we were finally seeing it for what it truly was. Not just a place we once lived in, but a place that had been holding something for us all this time, waiting for us to come back, waiting for us to be ready. And now we were. We stood in front of the wall, not moving, not speaking, just listening to that quiet, hollow sound that should not have been there. My hand was still holding the key, warm now, from being held too long. My brother looked at me, then back at the wall. "If there's something behind it," he said slowly, "how do we open it?" I didn't answer immediately because this moment felt delicate, like something that had been hidden for years was about to be revealed. And once it was, nothing would feel the same again. I stepped closer, running my fingers along the edge of the wall, carefully, slowly. And then I felt it. A slight difference, a small line, barely visible, as if part of the wall was not truly part of it. "Here," I said softly. My brother leaned in. "I see it," he replied. It was subtle, almost invisible. But now that we noticed it, we couldn't unsee it. A hidden door, blended into the wall, waiting for someone to look closely enough. I reached toward it, pressing gently. Nothing happened. I tried again, this time a little firmer. Still nothing. My brother stepped forward. "Maybe the key," he said. I looked down at it, then back in the wall, scanning carefully until I found it. A small opening, hidden near the edge, almost perfectly concealed. I hesitated just for a second, because something inside me felt the weight of this moment, not fear, but awareness, that we were about to uncover something that had been kept for a reason. "Are you ready?" my brother asked quietly. I nodded. "Yes." I inserted the key slowly. The metal slid in smoothly, as if it had always belonged there. I turned it gently, a soft click, barely audible, but enough. The wall shifted slightly, a small movement. Then it opened, not fully, just enough to reveal a narrow space behind it. Dark, still, hidden. We looked at each other. Neither of us spoke. Then, together, we stepped closer. The space behind the wall was not large, just a small hidden compartment. But inside, there were things, carefully placed, not random, not forgotten, but arranged, with intention. I reached in slowly, my hand brushing against something soft. I pulled it out, a bundle of letters, tied together with a thin piece of string, old, delicate. My brother leaned closer. Letters, he said. I nodded. Yes. There was something else inside, a small wooden box, darker than the cabinet from before, more carefully made. I took it out gently, holding it with both hands. It felt heavier than it looked, and not just in weight, but in meaning. We stepped back slightly, sitting down on the floor, right there in the hallway. The hidden door still open beside us, like a quiet witness. I placed the box in front of us. My brother picked up the letters, untying the string carefully, as if he understood. These were not just papers. They were something more. He opened the first one. The handwriting was familiar, not from memory, but from feeling, the same as the notebook. It's the same person, he said softly. I nodded. Yes. He began to read silently at first. Then, his expression changed slightly. Read it, I said gently. He looked at me, then nodded, and began. I didn't know how to say things out loud. His voice slowed, matching the words. So I wrote them instead. The sentence filled the space between us. I thought maybe one day you would find them. A pause. And understand. My chest tightened slightly because now it was becoming clearer. Who this was from. Who had left all of this behind. I reached for the box, opening it slowly. Inside, there were photographs, small, faded, images of moments we barely remembered. Us as children, standing in this very house, smiling, running, living inside something we hadn't understood at the time. Beneath the photos, there was one more thing, a folded piece of paper, different from the letters, newer, more intentional. I picked it up, my hand slower now, more careful, as if I already knew. This was the most important part. I unfolded it. The handwriting was the same, but stronger, clearer. If you are here, then you found everything. I swallowed softly. My brother was silent beside me, listening, waiting. I didn't want this house to be just a memory. I wanted it to be something you could return to. A pause, not for what it was, but for what it still holds. The words felt steady, certain, as if they had been written, without hesitation. There are things we don't say in life, not because we don't feel them, but because we don't know how. I felt my breath slow, because those words felt familiar again, like something we had already learned in a different way. But that doesn't mean they disappear. They stay in places, in moments, in houses like this. I looked around the hallway, at the open wall, at the space we had just uncovered, and for the first time, I understood. This house was never empty. It had been holding everything we were not ready to see until now. My brother exhaled slowly. So, this is why, he said quietly. I nodded. Yes, not just why the house existed, but why we had come back, why we hadn't sold it yet, why something inside us had asked us to return. We sat there for a long time, not speaking much, reading the letters, looking at the photos, feeling something shift inside us, not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. Like something long closed was opening, one layer at a time, and in that quiet moment, I realized something deeply. We didn't come here to let go of the house. We came here to finally understand it. We stayed there on the floor for a long time, not because we had to, but because neither of us felt ready to leave that moment behind. The letters were now spread gently between us, some already read, some still waiting. The box remained open, the photographs resting quietly inside, and the hidden door, still slightly open, as if it no longer needed to hide anything. My brother picked up another letter, holding it carefully. Then he looked at me. "Do you want to read this one?" he asked. I nodded, taking it slowly from his hands. The paper felt softer now, worn by time, but still strong enough to carry meaning. I unfolded it. The handwriting was familiar now, comforting, in a quiet way. "I used to think there would always be more time." I paused, letting the sentence settle, because it felt like something we had all believed at some point. More time to talk, more time to explain, more time to say the things that felt too difficult in the moment. I felt my chest rise slowly, then fall. But time doesn't wait the way we expect it to. It moves quietly, and then suddenly, it feels far away. The room around us felt even more still now, as if every word was being heard, not just by us, but by the house itself. If you are reading these, then maybe you are ready to see something clearly. A pause. Love doesn't always sound the way you expect. My hands tighten slightly around the paper. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is hidden in small things, in moments you don't notice until much later. I closed my eyes briefly because those words felt like they were answering something I hadn't fully asked yet. My brother didn't speak, but I could feel he was listening too, deeply. I opened my eyes and continued. "I made many mistakes. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I thought being present was enough." The words echoed softly inside me because they were simple but honest. And in that honesty, there was something powerful. But if you can see this now, if you can feel what this place holds, then maybe that is enough. A long pause followed, not written, but felt, because those words did not ask for anything. They didn't try to fix the past. They didn't try to explain everything. They simply existed, and somehow that made them even more meaningful. I lowered the letters slowly, placing it beside the others. My brother looked at me, his expression softer now, different from before we arrived. "We didn't know," he said quietly. I nodded. "No, we didn't." But now, we were beginning to. Not completely, not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel something change. I looked around the house again, not as something old, not as something we had left behind, but as something that had been waiting, patiently, quietly, for us to come back and understand. "We're not selling it," I said softly. The words came naturally now, without hesitation. My brother looked at me, then smiled slightly. "I was thinking the same thing," he said. A small silence followed, but this one felt different. Not empty, not distant, but full. Full of something calm, something steady. We began to gather the letters carefully, placing them back into the box, not to hide them again, but to keep them safe, to carry them forward. The hidden door remained open for a moment longer. Then my brother stood up and gently closed it, not as something secret anymore, but as something understood. We walked through the house once more, but this time, everything felt different. The rooms were no longer just spaces, they were memories, feelings, moments that had meaning, even if we hadn't seen it before. The window in the living room, the small drawer with the key, the quiet hallway, the hidden space behind the wall, all of it connected now, part of something whole. When we stepped outside, the air felt lighter. The trees moved gently in the wind, the same as before, but somehow more alive. We stood there for a moment, looking back at the house, not as something we almost lost, but as something we almost misunderstood. And that made all the difference. Do you think we'll come back often? My brother asked. I smiled slightly. Yes, I said. I think we will. Not because we had to, but because now we wanted to. And as we walked away, I realized something clearly. Some places are not meant to be left behind, not because of what they are, but because of what they hold. And sometimes, the most important things in our lives are not the ones we remember easily, but the ones we return to when we are finally ready to understand them. Thank you for listening slowly and staying with this story. If this story made you think about your own life, your own memories, or your own family, then take a quiet moment today and remember something you almost forgot. And if you want to continue learning English through calm, meaningful stories like this, stay with us. Because sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that stay with us the longest.